What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you some details from a deep dive about Starfield's upcoming Shattered Space DLC, which is launching about 2 weeks from today on September 30th, and seeing how it's one of 2 DLC reviews at the minimum I have planned in the next couple weeks, I thought it would be worth talking a little bit about what they've mentioned and sharing some thoughts on it. So just yesterday, from the time of this particular video, they gave a deep dive on the DLC, talking about everything to expect finally, so let's get into that. Now, if you're unaware, Shattered Space deals with the faction of House Va'ruun from the base game, which was present but never really saw a lot of screen time in terms of explanations or lore or anything. They're a very isolated faction who primarily operate out of their homeworld of Va'ruun Kai, where their culture revolves around worshipping something known as the Great Serpent. Now, they wanted to emphasize right at the beginning of this showcase that everything about this DLC takes place on Va'ruun Kai, which means it's a much more handcrafted location than everywhere else. Now, right away, that piques my own interest simply because much of what I felt was lacking from the base game was more compelling exploration, where there would be more interesting things to find than just a few wandering animals, and it looks like at least this location will attempt to do exactly that. Provide more handcrafted experiences and interesting things to explore. So let's talk a little bit about the planet itself, because they gave, naturally, some details about this as well. Starting with the fact that Va'ruun Kai has recently suffered a bit of a disaster. You see, whereas the base game is about humanity searching for answers, Shattered Space is about what happens when that goes wrong. Terribly wrong, as a matter of fact. It would seem that House Va'ruun was doing research into grav drives here, but that went horribly wrong, and they managed to rip the very fabric of reality around their capital city, which has caused more than a few issues. You're going to arrive a couple of weeks after that event took place and start dealing with the aftermath and putting things back together. Now, that's going to start with, naturally, dealing with House Va'ruun themselves in various ways, because their sort of main place of worship, the Scaled Citadel, and its leaders have been trapped in some sort of field that has surrounded the place. In their absence, the minor houses of House Va'ruun have taken to infighting and deciding about what's best for the future, despite the state of chaos they now find themselves in. Now, that's important to mention because we are going to be fighting some House Va'ruun, specifically the Zealots. These are a disbanded house that is now seeking to capitalize on the chaos and potentially reestablish themselves as a full-blown house that actively crusades and tries to spread their religion of the Great Serpent to everyone and by force. So they've taken over a great many locations, and you'll be seeing a lot of them. However, that's hardly the only thing you'll be dealing with, because we did get a look at some more sinister things. You see, as was mentioned, the fabric of reality has been torn here, and thus creatures have started to pour through, terribly warped and truly alien in comparison to everything we've seen thus far. And what's more, they made it clear that it was a very intentional design decision to try to push you into more closed quarter fighting. And while that can naturally mean melee, of course, it also mostly means that things are just closer to you, and therefore much more of a threat, as you're under a lot more pressure in terms of space. Now, other things, while they were not expressly elaborated upon, they did obviously accompany this with a bunch of new footage of Va'ruun Kai exploration, and we could see some other stuff happening here, including things like new weapons and seeing your character navigate what they briefly referred to as gravity anomalies throughout the area, and the more simply just dramatic landscape of the place overall, are definitely things to note. And I would say that it looks like they're going for much more of a horror-oriented vibe with this particular DLC, as everything about it either just looks off and sinister, or it's jumping out at you from various corners, and everything from the failed research and experiments going on here to the atmosphere and anomalies make it very clear that Va'ruun Kai is unwell and being here is dangerous. Now, how that holds up via the actual DLC and all the locations you go to and the people you meet and talk to will, of course, have to simply be seen. Now, another thing to think about here, though, is what bringing certain companions to this place with you will affect dialogue-wise. One of our companions is from House Va'ruun, and then others have had dealings with them in the past, albeit briefly. So there's a fair bit of potential there. So putting it all together here, I would say that from this deep dive, the DLC is looking pretty solid. I think it addresses a lot of my own concerns about the base game, which were primarily that the game simply needed more compelling exploration explicitly, and I think with a more handcrafted location, even if it is just one planet, they might be able to add that in a more substantial way. But if they can do that and then also tell a compelling story explaining this very mysterious faction while they're at it, then this could be a really compelling piece of DLC. But ultimately, time will tell, and we don't have much longer to wait, as again, this is releasing in just about 2 weeks or so, and you can absolutely expect a review from me on it one way or another. So if you're looking forward to that, certainly subscribe and stick around, but I'd also just generally like to hear what you think about some of this information, which naturally means to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.